Continuing the series where I talk about the political figures in Portugal, and specifically the political figures that are leaders of parties in Portugal, today I'm going to talk about the communist leader. His name is Jerónimo de Sousa, and he is the leader of the Portuguese Communist Party. The Portuguese Communist Party is essentially the exact same type of communism that you saw in Soviet Union, in the ex-Soviet Union. This party, for the most part, is consistent in their arguments because it's always the same. They have never tried to hide what they intend to do. Everyone knows perfectly well that if they get to power, we will be in a dictatorship. Everyone knows that what they want is the complete control of the state over everything and everyone. Everyone knows that under communist rule, you will not have property. Everything will be of the state, and you will work for the state at all times. No private enterprise is to exist under a communist regime. And that's what these people advocate. Obviously, in practice, things are a little bit different. And when they talk about attacking private initiatives, everyone that wants to start a business, everyone that already has a business and employs hundreds, maybe thousands of people, they are constantly attacked by the communists and also the left bloc and also the socialists. Although the left bloc and the communists are more extreme in their criticism. The socialists do it as long as that doesn't jeopardize the interests of the Socialist Party. And the communists are always attacking the private initiatives that employ hundreds of thousands of people, even though they say they are for the workers. They are always attacking everyone that employs people and that are not part of the state. If it is part of the state, then they will say that the problem needs to be fixed by the government. When they do not control the company itself, because it's a private company, then they will criticize the company for even existing. And most of the time, you would see the communists suggesting that you need to nationalize a certain company, that you have to have control of the state over that company. That's the sort of mentality that is associated with the communists and the left bloc, essentially. Private initiative is always being criticized. But the communists have a very hypocritical way to show that that's not really the case, at least when it comes to their own benefit. I think it was or last year or in 2017, all the parties except two, I believe, the very small parties, agreed to change the law that manages basically the financing of political parties. This law had some limitations in terms of how the political parties could receive donations. With this change, the political parties can receive donations from pretty much everyone and everything without having to declare what and from whom they are receiving it. And this opened a big discussion on how could this have been approved in this way, because at the time that this was approved, the Socialist Party, for example, was nearly bankrupt. They had lots of debts that they weren't paying and they were in court, but the law for the financing of parties, political parties, was changed so that they could not only receive financing from any source, but they would also get some sort of benefits from money that they receive from the state for being political parties. And like the VAT tax, for example, which we called IVA, and they would have benefit with this change on the law. They would have benefits, and one of the parties that was in complete agreement with this change was the communists and also the left bloc. But the left bloc was hilarious because they first agreed with it exactly as the test was written, but then when this came out, because this was done secretly in Parliament. practically no one knew that this was being done, that the change was coming. Someone leaked it, and when the public opinion basically knew about it, everyone was quite angry about this fact, because things were being changed to benefit political parties at the expense of the taxpayer, essentially. And yet we didn't really knew about it until it was already done, right? And the left bloc was the most ridiculous one, because they supported the text exactly as it was, but when the public opinion was that this was wrong, then they changed their mind and said, oh, we approved it, but in reality the text does need to be changed, does need to have some improvements, which is hilarious. They just changed their tune because the political, the public opinion was that what they did was wrong, and so they changed it. They are quite hypocritical. I mean, whoever votes for the left bloc must have some sort of mental disorder, because this party is so blatant in the way that they act, and how hypocritical they are, and how they only want a dictatorship, basically, because they censor people, they hunt people down just for not having the same ideas, and yet some people still vote for them. So that's why I say they have some sort of mental disorder. And I would argue the same for the communists, because they essentially want the same thing, even though they don't go to the extreme that the left bloc does actively try to censor people. The communists, not so much. But the result would be the same. It would be a dictatorship where no one has freedom, no one has rights, and everyone needs to work for the state. So the communists, along with Jerónimo de Sousa, of course, he's the leader, they voted for this new law, and they benefit from it greatly, because political parties in Portugal, for example, they do not pay property tax. And the Communist Party in Portugal is the political party with more property in Portugal. They are also, if not the wealthiest, one of the wealthiest. They have the most money. So receiving this change, or having this change to the financing of parties, was amazing for them. Not just for the Socialist Party, but also for the communists, I mean, because they now stand to gain even more than they did in the past. Obviously, this is not good for the country itself, because we have some really high property taxes, for example. We don't really have any sort of benefits. I'm talking about the individual citizen, while these political parties that are in power are doing their best to improve their own conditions and status, basically. And the Socialist Party, for example, even had the Constitutional Court forget about honoring some debts that needed to be paid, and so the dates that those debts had to be paid were forgotten by the Constitutional Court, and so the Socialists didn't need to pay for those debts, which is another reason to understand that the Constitutional Court is a lie. They are pretty much politically motivated, just like any other institution in this country, completely corrupt, and they will do whatever the politicians tell them to do. They do not act according to the Constitution. Speaking of the Constitution has an article, a principle, where they clearly state that political parties need to be independent of unions. And that's where the communists come in with another hilarious hypocrisy. And in this particular case, actually illegal, which is the fact that they have very close ties to one of the biggest unions in Portugal, I mean, which is CGTP. CGTP is a far left union, and they pretty much gather a large chunk of the public servants, and the Communist Party is directly linked to them. And this is unconstitutional because, as you can see, the principle in our Constitution that prevents this clearly states that unions have to be independent of political parties. There is no middle ground here. And PCP, the Communist Party, and the CGTP, the biggest union, they are pretty much the same thing. Where one is, the other one is as well. They, coordinate strikes. I don't know about financials, but I would be surprised if they did not have some sort of overlapping donations, let's say. People that are donating to communists are also donating to this union. And this is illegal, but as I already said in other videos, that's not relevant because no one cares. The Constitution is only used when it serves the interests of the left, and every other party has no power, or it is not big enough to be able to do anything, or doesn't want to do anything anyway. So the Constitution in Portugal is a joke, not because it's not valid and how it's written, but because it's never applied in full. It's only applied when the political interests, and especially the socialists or the communists, need it to be applied. Another thing where Jerónimo de Sousa, and this is actually pretty recent, where Jerónimo de Sousa has made a fool of himself was in regards to dictatorships around the world. Both left bloc and the communists, they support every sort of dictatorship, on the left side of course, in the world. Namely, Maduro in Venezuela, they obviously support Russia, and they also support North Korea, which has been on the spotlight. And recently, Jerónimo de Sousa was interviewed, and someone asked him about the fact that North Korea is not a democracy, and the way he replied was, it's an opinion, meaning that he doesn't really agree with it. His opinion is quite different, and he thinks that North Korea is a democracy. In his warped views, where communism is a great thing, obviously you would think that North Korea, one of the most repressing regimes in the world, where people have access to pretty much nothing, and the state controls everything, and they cannot be dissidents in any way. They have to have the exact same way of thinking, otherwise they will be punished. For Jerónimo de Sousa, this is perfectly valid and is a democracy, in fact. So this is the Communist Party and Jerónimo de Sousa in a nutshell. They are consistent in their argument in the way that they practically all the times they say the same thing, but they are very critical when they have to be, and especially when it comes to money, because for communists, their money is their own money, but everyone else's money is their money as well. So this is Jerónimo de Sousa, the communist leader, and I'll continue this series with another political figure, and I hope you like this, and I'll see you next time.